What's up, everyone? Welcome to Frogman Friday. I'm your host, Ryan Birdman Parrott. Today, our warrior guest is Derrick Van Orden, codename Vano. He served 26 years as a U.S. Navy SEAL and retired as a senior chief petty officer. Van Orden for Congress is the topic of the day. He's running in the great state of Wisconsin. You can follow Vano on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Derrick Van Orden. Handles to follow after the show. To learn more about Van Orden for Congress, go check out vanordenforcongress.com. Brother, welcome to the show.
Well, it's good to be on your show for a change, mister. We did an interview a little while ago, didn't we?
We sure did. You've been running constantly. So let's kick right into it. Tell me, you get out of the service after a whole lifetime of service and you just hadn't had enough of service. So.
Yeah, well, politics, it never occurred to me to run for a political office before. It just hadn't. And when I retired, we moved back to the state I was born in, which was Minnesota. But I grew up in Wisconsin. I did corporate leadership there, Fortune 500 stuff, executive coaching, leadership, and all that. And it really just, it just wasn't my thing. You're talking to these folks that are very successful and teaching them how to be more successful. And for them, it works. I mean, leadership training, executive coaching, all that stuff is really, really effective. But it just really wasn't my gig. And so we moved back to our farm after our youngest son graduated from high school. That was really the reason we went back to Minnesota, was to allow Danny, our youngest son, to go to high school at the same school for 2 years in a row. That was a big deal, because all our kids are military brats. But so that's why I took that job back there. So we moved back to our farm in Butternut, Wisconsin, which is way up north. And the village cafe closed. And the village really just kind of died. There's less than 400 people there. And that was kind of the heart of the community. And that the village had taken care, and I say the village as a collective unit, because it's a tight community there. They took care of our farm when I was gone. I did a tour to Iraq and Afghanistan and Germany and all these other places. And they just took care of that place while we were gone. They'd mow the front lawn, and that's in northern Wisconsin. So that's like over an acre, and they wouldn't even take money for gas. We're not your landscapers. We're your neighbors, And seriously, that's what America is about, Ryan. That's what they don't put on the news all the time. People don't want you to understand that is truly the nation that we live in, is that, right? So Sarah and I were like, wow, I worked in a restaurant before I joined the Navy. Sarah's an RN by trade and a stay-at-home mom for the past 20 some years. But we're like, hey, look, we have the wherewithal, and we're blessed to have some resources. Let's open this place up again. So we had to do a whole bunch of capital improvements on the building. It had fallen into disrepair. Did menu development with a buddy of mine named Bobby Munoz. This lady, she's a firecracker. She owns Bobbers on the lake, in case you're wondering, up in Butternut Lake now. And then got the menu and hired a staff and started running this cafe and got it up and going again as a way to give back to the village. It was so kind to us. And I think, more people should be doing stuff like that. But then we sold it to Bobby, and it's still there now, and it's back to being the heart of the village, which is really cool because we just love that place up there. We love our neighbors. And then we decided to move down to be closer to the airport because we had our 4th, 5th, and 6th grandchildren. So our oldest grandchild was 5. And how old are your kids again? 5, 3, and
5 and 2.
5 and 2, right? So our oldest grandchild was 5, right? So, but we had 4, 5, and 6 grandkids, the 3 within a 2-month period of time. And the girls were talking to Sarah, and they're like, hey, it's really hard to visit you up in Butternuts. We're like, hey, look, I worked this whole time. I missed a lot of my kids being growing up. I spent about 16 years away from home when I was in the teams for almost 22 years. Because that's your job, you know what I mean? That's, you train, you deploy, you're a SEAL. SEAL's natural environment is combat, and instructor duty is important, but it's more important to get out and do the work. So I was like, okay, yeah, all right, let's move. Okay. Even though I love that farm, and so we moved to a place that was 52 minutes away from the airport, to be closer to to make it easier for the kids to visit and for us to visit them. And that's where I found out about this guy named Ron Kine, who's my congressman. Boom, it's magic. He's my congressman. I know who he was. And the first impeachment of the president of the United States was coming up. That was a big deal. It's been about 2 years chasing this Russia stuff, which turns out, it's all BS. And we knew it from the beginning. But I wrote him a letter. I'm like, dear Congressman Ron Kine, who I don't know, what is your stance on impeachment? How are you going to vote? And he didn't write me back, which made me angry. Because the job title's representative, right?
That's right.
So I started looking into this cat, and I got into all that other crazy sort of stuff as a SEAL for about 10 years, and was, the primary function there was to find people around the globe in different places that didn't want to be found, right? So I started looking into this guy, and I'm like, wow, this guy is not part of the problem in Washington, D.C. He is the problem with Washington, D.C. They go along to get along. They're not representing the people of the district. He casts some, these catastrophic votes, and turned out I talked to people that he'd been lying to him. I'd never vote for that. He goes back to D.C. and doesn't know it tracks him. So he finally casts his vote for impeachment. He's the last person in the House of Representatives, 535 members, to make his vote public because he knew it wasn't going to be popular here. He was trying to hide it. But they did a voice vote. He had to do it on the floor. So I'm like, I write a guy. He used to work for Sean Duffy, who's Rachel Campos Duffy. His wife is on Fox News now. He does Fox stuff too. He was previously my congressman. So I write a guy that works for him. I'm like, hey, Jim, who are we running against this guy? And he wrote me back, you.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote back to him. I was like, ha, 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 ha. This is me sending a text, by the way.
I understand that.
You got that. It's for your older audience.
I've known you for a long time.
Right. So I'm like, I go, ha, 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 I write him back. And he didn't write me back. And I was like, when you write to somebody, like, ha, ha, joke, and they don't write back, that means you're serious. And that's when it really occurred to me. Like, oh my gosh, I solved problems for over 2 decades as a frogman. I did a lot of stuff during the SEAL teams. I'm very proud of. And I wrote all the curriculum for land warfare and special reconnaissance. We stood up the training detachment. I stood up the support activity 1. I was our first regional survey troop commander. It's like an 05 position now, I think. And we did a lot of stuff, I'm like, yeah, right. I can solve problems for Pete's sakes. And it just kind of slips your mind when you get out of the military, because you really change and shift colors, is the naval term. So I talked to Sarah about it, and I prayed about it with her. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to run for Congress because I don't like what's going on. And there's a saying that if you spend a lot of time complaining about the sermon, it's time for you to go to seminary, right?
That's right.
And I realized that I've been griping about politics for a long time. And, griping doesn't get it done.
No, it doesn't.
It just does not. And so I talked to the Republican Party of the state of Wisconsin. It's really interesting. I understand why people don't run for politics now. You have to be able to form a corporation. You have to be able to effectively manage people. You have to be able to write very strong, salient, clear messages for folks. And then you just really have to be able to run a business. And people say, well, politics shouldn't be a business. But as a representative, the lower house, that's what they call that, I have to speak to 750,000 people over in my particular district, 18 whole and partial counties, 11,000 square miles. I have to be able to speak to them and convey to them a message about why they should be putting me in a position where I can make decisions to make their life, the lives of their children, their community better. That's why you got to be able to run a business, because you have to get that message out. It's real simple. Once you get into it, before you really understand it, it seems like all this stuff is very, very strange. So I formed a team, decided to run for office, announced my candidacy. Like 72 hours later, they locked down the entire planet.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's odd. And I ran a campaign against a guy at that point. He was a 24-year Democrat incumbent who had 100% name recognition, had $3.1 million in the bank. And I had, no money. I'd never run a campaign before, ever. This is the funny part. The only person that knew my name in that district was my wife, Sarah. So my name recognition was 1, which is a good one.
Wow.
Still around 28 years. I like her.
So good.
Right. And then after the end of the campaign, I really ran about a 9-month campaign and got more votes than any Republican candidate in the history of the 3rd district, raised more money than any candidate in the history of the 3rd district. Came second. I think there's like this another guy named Dan Kapanke. He was an awesome American. I think he got like 500 more votes or whatever, closer to Ron Kind than I did. So it proved a couple points. First and foremost, if you have a message that you really care about America, that you're willing to do the work, that you understand that there must be appropriate balances in everything that we do. And a big issue then was the appropriate balance between public health concerns and private individual constitutional freedoms, right? I mean, that's what I was telling people the whole time, dude. And it was shocking because this guy weighed mass in front of me and all this everything. And I'm like, look, if people were to view things from a different level, like as SEALs, this is one of the things that really planning was something that I really learned in the SEAL teams. The other thing that I really learned is that you need to, at some point, be able to divorce yourself emotionally from problem sets in order to have real clarity. We just have to, right? Otherwise, things go bad. And so as a Christian, when I'm confused about stuff, I read my Bible's in my room, but I read the Bible because that's, to me, as a person of faith, Christianity in particular, that book holds all of these answers for me, right? And if you're a Muslim, you read the Quran. If you're a Jew, you read the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible. But America is a secular country, right? It is. I mean, all of the principles, don't get me wrong, don't confuse what I'm saying here. All of these principles that are taken from our foundational documents are based in Judeo-Christian values. You cannot argue that. If you do, you're driving an agenda. That is truth, right? So as a society, when all of this stuff went cattywampus and nobody knew what the heck was going on, right? If we had simply returned to the foundational documents that got our nation going, we would have been so much better off if we had taken time to read the Federalist Papers. That's really impeachment stuff. If we had read that, but if we read the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and really absorbed those things, got them at a visceral level, and then applied that to this problem set, which was this unknown virus, we would have been so much better off. And now we're finding that out. We're finding it out that stuff would have been true. So having a message that is based in something as eternal as you can get in a secular society, which is our Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers, having a message in that rings true because everybody knows it is. This is kind of a cool fact. I don't know if people know this. So we have the longest standing Constitution of any nation in the world. And we're one of the youngest nations, right? Why?
So cool.
Why, Birdman?
America.
Well, because it's a truly profound, inspired document.
You're right.
That stuff just doesn't come along every once in a while.
They sat down for a long time to figure it out and make sure that it wasn't about them, that it was about us. There it is.